First of all, we should start with why are we doing a reboot and why were we offline during the past, I think, year or so?
Yeah, even more. Yeah, it was a bit more than a year, as far as I remember. Yeah, good question, man. I'm happy to go through just the first, and I'm curious as well to see what your second time reasoning is here. But basically, what it comes down to, I think, for me, is being very focused at that time on bugs and work in general. I mean, obviously, there was a lot happening in the crypto industry, right? I mean, it was a complete craze at that time. It was the peak of the craze, and yeah, there's just so much activity and noise in that industry. And I think I was relatively susceptible to that this time. And I learned this is the second complete mania that I've been through in crypto now. And I think I learned yet a few new lessons this time, and also reinforced older ones. And I think to cut the noise even more next time. But just extremely focused on work, and trying to make the most of obviously also the fact that there's a lot of people and investors in the industry. Um, yeah, I think it's primarily been that. Also focusing a little bit more on myself, and it just didn't have the mental space. I think for both of us, it was really the case. We didn't have the mental bandwidth at that time to really focus on something like this. But we discussed it. And I am really excited. I'm really happy that we're going to be doing this again. And I've been thinking about it a lot. And it was actually, it's funny. Well, I'll go into that in a little bit. But there was a funny moment that really reinforced the mentality that we have with this podcast, which is that it's for play and not a commercial project. But yeah, how's it been since our last recording for you? Just for our listeners, what's been going on in your life?
Yeah, a very similar situation. So I've also been very busy with my own companies. I was already running a small performance marketing agency that took some of my time. But 3 years ago, I think, yeah, it's almost 3 years ago, I started a second company, Microdose Pro, in which we decided to focus on microdosing psychedelics. And it started out kind of as a fun hobby project that during COVID times we had time for, and we thought, let's see if this turns out to be something of value maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, and let's already start building on that. But I was completely wrong with that estimation. It already turns out that the appetite for psychedelics and microdosing is extremely high in Europe and also in the United States and Canada. So that took way more time than I initially anticipated. And yeah, also that just it's just a very fun project, right? It's That's really something that is close to my heart and that I want to work on. And I noticed that doing three things, so two companies and also the podcast, that was a bit too much, just to manage. And I think for you, like you said, the same, like in your crypto peak phase with Bucks, then the podcast really became something that was just like, something that we had to do and always was prioritized at, on the lowest level. But I kind of missed it because the like you said, for us, this whole podcast project is not really for once a thing that we need to grow no matter what, and it's like it's all, we rely on it for income or whatever. It's really like a play project. It's something that is just very fun to do and to keep in sync with each other, because basically we also don't see each other that often, maybe once or twice a year somewhere in the world. I think the last time I saw you was in Portugal on a festival, and
Yeah,
I was in Africa for the last few months, and you are now on Bali. So we kind of travel around a lot, and because we're both so busy and so antisocial, I would say, it's not that we have that much contact. But when we talk, it's like it's a real talk. It's like it's a real checkup with each other, and it's like it's like two good friends talking again and checking in and discussing. Yeah, the most fun stuff. And there's not much people also with whom I can share the kind of stuff that we did in the podcast. So I think we should just pick it up again and try to be systematic this time as well, like to have like a strict monthly date and just sit down and discuss what's on our mind. And yeah, let's see where it brings us.
Yeah, fully agree. Well said, man. Yeah, I think it's. I have a lot to say. It's really funny when it comes to us not seeing each other that frequently, and at the same time being relatively antisocial and traveling. It reminds me of the fact that, because I'm in Bali, the general association is, and also from the people around me, is like, man, you should be partying all the time. Like, why aren't you like partying and drinking and whatever? And I keep telling them, you don't have to do that. It's the infrastructure here that is quite convenient. It's a time zone that I really like. I have the whole morning to myself, so I can read hours every day, which has been great. But but my girlfriend, who I'm here with, we're traveling together. She is quite extroverted, and we work at a co-working space. And in a setup like that, I have my own monitor, and I have a pretty good setup there that you can buy or rent here. However, the expectation is in a co-working space that you're kind of social. And I think now I've been here for a month now, and I think I've kind of had the reputation so far that I'm literally that guy that doesn't talk to anyone at all, ever. I
Nice.
come in, I say hi, I don't even ask how you people are doing. I just get to work and then I leave.
Sounds like pretty good date.
It's perfect, right? Yeah, yeah.
I
So
just
it's
did the same. Like I spent 2 months in South Africa, and half of Amsterdam and the Netherlands is basically now or in Cape Town. It's like ridiculous,
yeah,
which is fun. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces. But I literally just took like a room in a villa, like as remotely as possible, and where I could just like read for 2 3 hours in the morning, then do some workout, some yoga, and then just go work in that villa as well, and then have my own motorbike and just ride around the country and go, in the water and stuff. And there were weeks that I didn't even see people at all. Like, and even my co-founders were there, and I was like, "Oh yeah, like it's just like here. It's just like the isolation is just so good. And whenever you want to see someone, the infrastructure is there. That's perfect." But no, I totally
yeah.
resonate with that lifestyle.
Yeah, it's funny how this kind of travel allows you to really seek a place for yourself, and it's the reading exactly. I completely align with that, and I think it's a very healthy habit that we now have time for. And my reading spot as well. Like, I have a small cafe close by where I get a coffee every day, and the reading spot I chose is in the corner facing a wall, and there's just nothing.
Ah, fuck that. Okay, that's too hardcore, man.
It's really good.
You're on Bali and you're facing a wall when you're reading.
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean, I do like, and that's the convenience, right? Like, if you on a random day after a few weeks, you really feel like, and I guess you experience exactly the same in South Africa. You really want to see people, then there's everything that you need. That you can just go drive to the beach, have an amazing time for a day, and then you can recharge again for a while, and then not see anyone. And there's a lot to say for that experience. But yeah, I think there's just so much to catch up on. Just going back to our original point, there's just so much to catch up on, and I agree. Like, there's throughout the last more than a year now, there's a lot of stuff that because we do still sometimes do a catch up that we just discussed that uh, is just very interesting. And I think as you as well, I don't have anyone that I can that freely dive into things like personal knowledge management, but also other similar interests that we have, and obviously also you focusing on my microdosing that is getting really big, and actually been reading a little bit more about that as well in terms of its relation to meditation. There's just a lot of cool stuff there that I think we're both busy with, that is fun to share. And I think also, what didn't we kind of discuss as well, that what we would like to do for the podcast moving forward is do these catch ups on a monthly basis, and then also still bring out BKM stuff, because I guess you changed your routine and
Yeah.
tools as well quite a bit.
Yeah, I think like like we said in the intro here, like this whole project is really like a play project, and it's something that we both like to do, and to do a little bit of reflection on the previous year. So like 2 years ago, when we started with the podcast, we saw that we already got caught up a little bit in the whole, the distribution, the marketing game, and the whole shebang. That our talks that we just have, okay, if few hundred people watch those, fun, whatever, okay, cool. But then we recorded the tutorials for like Notion and for second braining and for Obsidian, and I even did a Spotify thing, which also were really fun to do. But those get 30,000 views, and then we're like, oh, I think you had one video with what is 60, 70,000 views on Obsidian, and then you already felt like, ooh, so the demand for like for those kind of things, that is on YouTube, the platform is made for that, and we already like kind of geared towards, okay, we have to create more of that. But that was just one part of what we wanted to do, and it's fun, but it was not the initial aim. So it already, just by the sheer success of the metrics, it became something of a thing to go into that direction, and that for me made it too much like a work project. So I was like,
Yeah,
okay, we now have to create this kind of stuff, we have to be successful here. Like, no, that was not the initial aim. The initial aim was that we just sat down, that we discuss like how we attack our problems, our knowledge gathering, those kind of things, and then we share also how we do it. But it should not become a, for me at least, a platform that is where the goal is just pure metrics, right?
yeah,
So I think that's very important to highlight, and that we even when we started doing the crypto episodes also with Jorn and Paul, that now have started Flagship, that the algorithm was punishing us. It was punishing us because we did that. So it was a very interesting experience that YouTube was basically telling us, don't do this anymore, because your viewers, they expect this, they want this. So that video gets 70,000 views and likes and engagement and whatever. And because you now started doing these videos, we saw basically a drop in all the other content as well. Very interesting. So it's that also made me think a bit like how algorithms work, how they are steering you into a certain direction, all those kind of things. Um, so
yeah.
yeah, that's just a reflection there, and I think that we should do this talk on a monthly basis. That's for me the main aim. And if we, along the way, because I have many things that I want to share as well, and you probably also have new tools that you want to share, then we should definitely do that. But it should not be expected that that will be the main aim of this channel.
Yeah, I totally feel you. It's funny because it reminds me of an experience I had very recently, just before this episode. Actually, I was walking away at the co-working space, and there was someone that is really into growth. Like everything that he does now is focused on growth on social media. Twitter threads, etc. And obviously we had quite some internal and struggle between the two of us, just trying to find what our place is in this whole thing. Like once you go well, it's very yeah, it's very nice as well, and it's very attractive to try and focus on how can we get more views, and because it's rewarding, it feels great. And on the other hand, how can we stay true to our mission? So I told him I was going to record a podcast episode, and the first thing he asked, like, well, so how are you growing it? What's your growth strategy? And I instantly felt, and that made me yeah, quite grounded in terms of what our mission here is. I instantly felt resistance to that idea and was like, well, no, this is a purely a hobby project. I basically told him we don't give a fuck. I don't care about growth. It's not a commercial thing. Whatever happens, happens as long as it's fun. And I really like that we went back to the base of what we actually wanted to do, because all of these things that we do discuss are fun, and I bring the ideas and I get your ideas, and I have fun while doing it. And indeed, our last episodes, even though I did enjoy it, also the recordings themselves, there were definitely times where I felt like, okay, so I have to now make a new Obsidian video, and I need to find, or maybe even kind of delve into what I've changed and try to find some relevant updates, because I need to produce that video. And it's like, no, why do I need to? Why do you need to? So it's good inner exploration.
Yeah, for sure. But like exactly what you said, like this extreme focus on unlimited growth, just on a macro scale, but also now just like basically everything that you do. I also work with people that are basically into growth, like very good friends of mine, and it's always also about, okay, how we're going to grow this. What is the growth strategy? And I like it. The part of me likes it and likes to think about it, but sometimes it's really like, fuck, man. It's some things you just want to do because they're fun, and that is if you're having fun, and if it's good and other people enjoy it, then the growth is like a secondary nice effect, that's something that will come by itself.
Yeah,
It shouldn't. And that's also like it's interesting because like I felt that as well with my other company with Microdisc Pro, like I said, that there is a big part of me does this because I intrinsically love it. I like it, and this is what I wanted to do. This is really like I found something here which I wake up in the morning and I look forward to working on this project. But then still there is this initial this push from people around us, and also that people that have a stake, that they need growth, right? So they need you to get that message more out and to have more strategies, and to build that out more. And that's always something that has a bit of friction within me. And I'm not sure where it comes from. It could be that you just need to align more with something, and then the growth is like a nice thing that you want to work on. But with this project, like I really don't really have that urge, and this is probably like extremely detrimental for our channel and our strategy. um, because
I don't
that of
know.
course that is what makes what makes the big channels these days, and how things become successful. It's like focusing on those metrics.
Perhaps, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me that there's a lot to say about this, right? Because and you as well, we come from the startup world. VC-backed startups even more are pushed to grow. They need to grow because they have a promise to deliver some value in the future, and it creates this like kind of this wave, because the it's interesting because most of the companies and startups that we ourselves engage with on a day-to-day basis, all these apps that I use, and even Readwise is a good example of that. Even though they're, as far as I know, they're actually not VC backed, and I really appreciate the fact that they have a mission that is not as growth oriented. But anyways, that replicates the pattern even more, right? Because the tools that you use, they use the strategies that are needed for growth, and then you get confronted with that everything in the world around you nowadays, in terms of the digital world, works based on this model of needing growth, and
Yeah.
it's hard to get rid of. And did you know the documentary Hypernormalisation?
No.
Oh, it's big. It's about this largely. A big recommendation, definitely a must watch, because it has a yeah. It's all about the influence, the external influences on our own behavior, and how we're basically compelled to do and behave in a way that might not be in line with our inner scorecard. Which is what I really appreciate about this project, because it's Warren Buffett's, I think, mental model of the outer and the inner scorecard, where the outer scorecard is what you think the world expects of you, and kind of living up to expectations, that you think the world has or the world actually has. And then there's the inner scorecard, which is just doing stuff because you like it. And I
Mm.
don't know. I kind of feel like if you do that stuff, there is a chance that it will grow. And if not, then at least you've had fun and you've learned something along the way. Um, I think there's a lot to say for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I don't know about Warren Buffett's inner and outer scorecard concept. I didn't read any books of Warren Buffett, to be honest. I know, of course, who he is and what his kind of general view is, but this is interesting. It sounds a bit like having a persona, which is something that the world expects of you. That the image that they have of you, and you want to conform to that. But it's like kind of a lie, or it's just a facade. Um, it all reminds me, like I think there's this podcast, you probably have shared this with me, with Tim Ferriss, and I think it was the CTO of Coinbase, I'm not sure, but they talk a lot about distribution. So a lot of the and that's the this kind of like the thing I'm playing with, the internal dynamic. It's okay, a lot of people, they want to focus purely on creating something very cool, something, a very good product or service, and then they expect, if they focus on that it will sell itself because it's so good. Well, that's clear fallacy. That's not how the world works at all. And then you have like a very good chunk of people that focus, like your friend, only on the the distribution part. So it's growth. So it's not like the content itself or what you create, but it's like owning distribution. And I do feel that we are now diverged a bit more towards the only distribution side, that like a lot of stuff is just pure other bullshit that you sell and see and where you come across in daily life. That is, I think, not a good thing. So I think we definitely need to go back to more creating and less distribution. But the two go hand in hand. It's kind of like a pact with the devil. You have to distribute. You have to sell, and you have to get your the thing that you built to your audience. That is part of it, and it won't happen by itself. So
Yeah.
I think that is like the point, that the creative community, the people that purely focus on creating a good service or product, that they miss that a lot, and I also see that a lot.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very common also in the engineering or the dev world, where I actually recently finished a book from Tony Fadell called Build. He's the original creator of the iPhone and the iPod, actually, that made Apple as big as it is today, and also Google Nest. I mean, originally it was Nest and later acquired by Google. And it's interesting because he actually worked on a project that was very similar to what eventually became these kind of handheld devices called General Magic, where they had infinite budget and they were just nerds working on something that they thought was really cool. And they worked on it for like, I think, literally like 3 to 5 years, nonstop. They poured everything they had in there, and it sold like 4,000 of them. And then they went bankrupt.
Yeah, but this is fucking engineers, man. Like I'm not an engineer, but when I work with engineers or devs, and it's always about, oh, we have to build this. This will be so cool. And then they spend like all their time and research on building this, and then it's like, but did you validate this? Did you actually check if someone wants this? And it's like, no, and nobody fucking cares. It's like, oh my god, like I had to learn this the hard way too, you know. So I also have this mentality of just, I'm just gonna build my Notion setup and things that I think it's cool, and then I expect my whole team to work with that, and nobody works with it. And they're all like, this is way too complex, and I don't use it. And I use Apple Notes, and I'm like, it's like, yeah, you have to check in with your audience or with the society if there's a need for this, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's so interesting because that finding that balance is really hard. Also in terms of personality types, I feel because either, I mean, there's definitely unique cases, but either you're on one side of the spectrum where you are really focused on potentially also really extroverted. You talk a lot with people. You really engage with the world, and and most of the things that you do are also about selling, and that's a good thing. Being able to grow something is a beautiful and important part. But then indeed you might end up creating bullshit. And on the other hand, you have a lot of people that are creating really cool stuff and nobody knows about it and nobody cares because they're missing some really important part of it. And it's beautiful because it's a struggle of values as well, because I feel in every single thing that I've done, Blockport, Bucks Crypto, and also new things that I'm working on, including this podcast, of course, everything that I've been involved in that has something to do with creation. It's this constant like friction between what do I choose? Am I true to myself? Am I selling myself out or not? It's Jesus. But yeah.
Yeah, but also there, like when you said this, I think it was Naval Ravikant that has this quote that it's easier to teach a engineer how to do sales than to teach a sales guy how to do engineering. So there is also this unfair distribution, that the distribution itself, that skill, it's easier to learn than to create something, to engineer something, to build something. So that's something I struggle with, because like I think that we basically maybe did the opposite direction. Like we have the same personality type, and we're friends, and we kind of followed a similar path with entrepreneurial interest. But you come from an angle of, you build first, and now you are learning how to do marketing. That's interesting. I kind of went the other way around. I kind of first figured the marketing thing out by having a company in that, and to do that for many clients. And now the last few years, only like I discovered what I want to build. Like that was, I never knew what I wanted to build, or where my skill set was. So it's it's purely to balance those two things out. Then that I think it's truly a skill to master in this day and age. But I think that I would prefer, in hindsight, your path, because of that principle, that it's easier to teach a engineer how to sell something than the other way around.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably easier to learn selling if you're an engineer. However, I do think I end up underestimating how difficult it can be actually to do proper marketing and proper sales. Maybe sales in terms of like selling a product, like a business to business kind of context, is not that difficult, but trying to create something that will sell to many people, like consumers on the internet or not, is actually surprisingly complicated. It's an art. So
Definitely, it's highly competitive,
yeah,
and it,
it's
it only
a
gets worse.
the mindset is that's what I struggle with the most, is the mindset. You can't really have an algorithmic or an engineering focused orientation on that problem, because it requires much more of timing. You have to be on the right spot at the right time. Whereas my initial model was like, oh, it's fine, if I reply or do this thing a few days later, but then the opportunity is gone. And that's fine if you're building code.
Yeah.
You can be like, oh, think about it and then act tomorrow. That doesn't work in those cases.
Yeah, that's just my exact problem. This is what I don't like. Also, with just running companies in general, like the the time, the fact, indeed, what you said, that you are dependent on timing. That it's a time dependent job. While with engineering, it's you spend most times alone, and you are like writing or creating some great piece of content or product. Then it's mostly spending alone, and then that is where you spend your hours, and that's also what I prefer. That's what I like. So it's again, it's finding that balance that is extremely challenging for me as well.
Yeah, it ties nicely into this podcast actually, because we get the benefit of being able to do individual creation and co-created creation. So what I'm really curious, just to make sure that we spend actually one of the burning questions that I have, um, because there's this. I think you were actually the one that sent it. There's this Dunning-Kruger curve, and then this meme. Yeah, you know which one I'm talking about.
The
Where
Apple Notes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Okay, so I'm still at the peak, man, where we're like Obsidian and then link to Readwise and then this super complicated setup, and then you have at the bottom, where it's this blissful wisdom is just Apple Notes, and I think I heard that you're back to Apple Notes. Is that true? What is the journey and why?
yeah. So I think that this meme, we have to edit it in probably, because it's quite funny, and definitely relevant to the whole PKM community or space. What I was doing 2 years ago is, in hindsight, I think I was just on crack cocaine when it comes to personal knowledge management, and that I wanted to build a custom solution for everything, and I wanted to use a tool for everything, and I wanted to find this unifying force for in my case Notion, to do everything in Notion, and to create the ultimate setup. And I think a lot of personal knowledge management enthusiasts, they suffer of this exact same issue, and I see this a lot also on YouTube, and I see this a lot on blogs that I read. People, they tend to get to lose themselves into just building for the sake of building, right? And then the functionality of it just suffers from it. And at one point I was using Notion for my to-do lists, for my project management, uh, for my logs, for my journal, for everything I was doing in there. And basically this was in in hindsight not a good thing. It was nice to have that experience, but there was definitely a tyrannical force within myself that was going fully, we have to structure everything in that way. And when I watch this, it's funny because when you watch your old stuff back, that you think like, okay, with shame and guilt, and then like, oh my god, who was that guy? When I watch my Notion video of like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, like when I recorded that tutorial, that I watch it back now, I'm like, Jesus, man, this was way too much, right? I was doing everything in there, and it's funny because a lot of people, they resonate with it, they also want to do it, but I had to really sit down, reflect, and to balance my inner structures a bit more. And I decided, okay, I'm back to a physical journal. That is basically now I live from that. Like also like a lot of to do stuff I do in there. It's you might like cringe if you hear this, but it's that works. And Apple Notes. That I also started using Apple Notes for just my meetings because in Notion it just didn't work as properly as I wanted to. So that's where Apple Notes came into the picture. Um, in general, I think I just become a bit more relaxed with how I approach things and how I
Mm.
use different tools, and there's no like no need to do everything in the most optimal, uh, best systematic approach in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny you say this because, and I mean, I definitely want to see if we can get some time to do some structure of an episode where we go through the details of Apple Notes versus Notion. That's because I really want to understand because I'm on a different different cocktail of crack cocaine, I guess. Um, but I really
Nice.
resonate because I've been confronted with exactly what you mentioned. Is that I had this tyrannical force where it's like Obsidian is like the tool to rule them all, and I will create tables and I will create my whole life planning in there, and my reflections and my businesses and everything goes into Obsidian. And I just the more I tried doing that specific thing, the more it started to suck. Like my Obsidian became more and more confusing and convoluted. At some point, I made a new note every single day because I had this, glorious idea that is still there on the internet. I'm sorry, everyone that adopted that practice, because I think I messed that one up. I watched that video and I was like, Jesus, that was not a good idea to make one note for every day. So I'm now like stuck with hundreds of notes that are named after a date. And every time I open my graph, like these notes are utterly completely useless, but they still fill up my database with hundreds of notes. So anyways, I had a similar journey where I realized I kind of grounded and came to myself, and I was like, you know what, Obsidian is great, but it's good for short thoughts that really are more of the creative nature, or for research purposes, and maybe some code that I want to save for later, and ideas, etc. But when it comes to planning and when it comes to meeting notes, everything that I try to do in there doesn't work. So I actually went back to Notion for that. So now I'm using that
Ah,
for planning. I'm using it for meeting notes. I'm using it for some other things that I will then also continue sharing on our channel. And I use Things, which is it's Things 3 is a tool. I really really like it for task management that has an amazing UX. It is iOS and OS X only, but it's somewhat akin to Apple Notes in the sense that you don't have any linking or fancy stuff going on. It's a pretty rigid format, but it works really well just for one specific thing. And I do think that if you really settle down on a combination of tools and you only use them for what they're good at, it is actually super doable. But you have to go through this phase of being too excited, I guess, with the tool and trying to use it for everything. But it's definitely like now that whole phase of, if if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, kind of, I think is over, and we can
mm.
go into what actually works. But do you still use Notion at all, or
Oh
how
yeah.
how do
I still on a daily basis I use Notion, but it's I use it more I would say responsibly and not as the hammer you just described because it was definitely my sledgehammer. Everything had to go within Notion. For teams, I still use it for meeting notes, for project management. I still use it for roadmaps, for a lot of things related to teams. That I think it's still the best tool I use, and they made some pretty cool advancements as well in the past year, especially now with the AI stuff. I'm checking that out a bit. We can maybe dive into that a bit more as well. But yeah, I definitely use Notion on a personal level. I don't use it anymore for to-do list for task management. I think that that also took the fun out of Notion for me. Like in my view, like where Notion shines for me personally is for knowledge management and for research purposes. So I love like I go completely mayhem, obsessive wise with creating databases with different views for like every topic I'm reading about or learning about, for psychedelics or for calisthenics or just everything, and I love to just spend hours in my weekend just like up like just creating the the perfect pages for that, just for my own purposes. That's something I really enjoy. It really gets me into a flow state. So having that in the same tool as my task management, which also included a lot of like dull work and very boring stuff, which have to happen for work. That kind of like gave me a bit of an aversion for Notion, and I noticed within myself using it less for the fun stuff. So I decided I'm not going to do that there anymore. I'll fix something else for that. And Notion is primarily for my private life. It's planning and research. It's fun, It's the things I want to do. And for business, there's a lot of potential, which I use it for, like a lot of like business things, like I said. But personally, like Notion is still my favorite tool. I can do some perhaps some extra recordings how I use it now. Can share some of my knowledge databases for sure. I can do that. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like how I use it now.
Interesting. So you okay? So you combine it, but I guess Apple Notes is much more of a personal note taking system. Then that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So again, for team meetings, I think Notion it's really good because everyone has a central place where they can review and reread the meeting notes. That of course that's what you want. But I have to say, like, just for personal quick notes when I'm somewhere in the supermarket or walking in the forest and I want to make a note, then Apple Notes, it's like 10 times more efficient for me because it just works faster. It's just you open it quickly. That's how I use it. So
yeah.
it's not that I have like this need anymore, like which I had before. Like that's I think the psychological tyrannical force that I was invaded by, to have everything one specific way. There's one tool and that's it, and I cannot use something else. And I feel that a little bit. I felt that within you as well, but a lot of people in this whole space, I feel that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Man, if I could at that time, I would make toast with obsidian, like anything I could imagine. And now, indeed, like I feel I'm seeing a somewhat of a pattern in that I end up for quick takes, I end up using Things 3, which is a fast, more minimalist app, I guess, not too different from Apple Notes. And then for planning, I use Notion, and obviously my calendar, but like for roadmaps and stuff, it's definitely Notion, and for team stuff. And then for research, however, I use Obsidian, but it seems to be able to solve the same problem. So it looks like what you need on average, if you're into knowledge management and using tools this way and keeping notes and doing research and stuff, is a quick take app that is easy and minimal to use. You work in a team, potentially for the planning stuff you can use Notion. I know there's Coda as well that I'm going to check out soon, that a lot of people are excited about. And there's a lot of tools happening, coming up in that area. And then you have research that you could do in Notion, but you could also do it in Obsidian or Rome, and there's loads of options. Seems like those three really kind of cover all the needs, right? Or have you adopted other tools as well?
Let me see, look. Not really. So I really threw out a lot as well, like a lot of just junk that I didn't need. The main tools right now are again Notion, but I'm also really using Readwise a lot, like way more intensively than I used to do that before. And again,
Cool.
like for me, tools they have to grow a bit on me because like now you mentioned Things 3 already. Like I've heard you saying it before, and after like I've got the message maybe 20 times, I'm gonna look into it and okay, it is actually quite good. Same with Readwise. We did a podcast on this like 2 years ago. You were like just selling Readwise as if you were hired by them, to like as a sales manager, you have to get Readwise. And after like only like 6 months, then I okay, maybe Zoe's onto something. And then I'm starting to use it a little bit and then a little bit more. And now I'm like just again like, whoa, this is the best shit ever, right? So now I'm really integrating Readwise within my setup, and it also it fits more in my current aim in life, my goals, I would say, because the past 5 years I was just getting out of my out of university, and I just did my master's degree, and I wanted to have my own company. So I also needed to fix for myself a way to have a lot of productive output. So that's where the whole task management systems came from. So I needed to make myself more efficient and to create more. But now that is not my main focus anymore. That's like I kind of like integrated that. That's kind of like something I have now, a skill. When I want to deploy it, I can deploy it. But I want to right now. I just want to learn to read way more and to gather more and to most of all integrated information. And that is definitely my biggest challenge in life in general, is to integrate knowledge. And like I've been looking for the tools to do that, and I in my view Readwise is just the best tool I've used so far to do that.
Yeah, I feel you. I have exactly the same experience, like wanting to improve yourself. And freelancing, I was talking about this with some people recently, actually, about this entrepreneurial journey, starting freelancing. Indeed, because your time uh, is basically converted into money. And the more time you put in, the more money you'll make. But also, the more efficient you are, the higher the rates you can charge. So you get into this game of trying to optimize yourself as much as you can. But at some point, you've kind of mastered that skill, and then I'm in a similar stage as like you. I just want to have a lot of knowledge. I want to be able to store that, and I want to be able to use it on a day-to-day basis. Being a better operator for the business and better person. And Readwise Reader, a new tool actually that I added to the repertoire, which has been incredible so far. It's one of these apps similar to Instapaper. It's very similar to Instapaper actually, and there's a couple of others out there. One is Matter, Get Matter, but this one is by far the best in being able to save things from the internet, just articles and stuff, and then highlight them. Because it's from Readwise as well, it automatically gets synced to your Readwise, and it's such a. I'm going to do a walkthrough on that. I can't really show it right now, but please stay
Cool.
tuned for a whole walkthrough on that stuff and the way I use it. But yeah, man, those apps are gold. They're definitely surging in popularity as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like it's kind of strange because Readwise is it's nice and it does what it should do, but it's I don't have the feeling that it's like that well, like high level developed yet. Like some things are just buggy and don't work yet. So it's like there should be some alternatives, right? Or is this like such a niche market that there's just no demand for it, or what is this? Like are we that specific?
Such a good question. I was wondering the same. I mean, so we have an affiliate with them. We of course it's important for us to be able to at least fund the basics of this podcast, the equipment that we use, the tools that we use, and the production and the people that help. But and it's not a lot that we need. But anyways, upon setting that up, we had a chat with them, and I think it's Dan Doyle, the founder. We discussed Readwise a little bit, and they're actually not backed by funding. They're just enthusiasts. I think he has a separate business that he actually does as a main job. Perhaps things have changed, and they're now primarily focused on Readwise, and Readwise Reader seems to be more slick. But what I love about this tool, and this actually ties back perfectly in what we initially were discussing about doing something just for fun, is it's something that he definitely did also to start a company, but it seemed like they were able to maintain a really healthy balance between doing something they enjoyed and cared about and also making it a business, because it never went through this hyper growth kind of thing, just staying calm. It's a book that actually that's very related to this that I think is worth reading. I'm going to dive into is from the founders of Basecamp. I just quickly forgot their name, but they're very much about not doing funded, really hyper growth kind of companies, and that there's something to say for that. So that's why it's a little bit clunky, but it does grow super consistently, and it's a small team, by the way.
Yeah, it's what you say, like not do the hyper growth. Like I resonate with that. For me, that's also with again with what we're doing right now with Microdose Pro. This is all bootstrapped, so this is all private money. We all fund ourselves. That is the way I like it. I have to say, because this will get you, in a specific. It will give you a specific freedom to create what you want to create, and I don't like that pressure. So I've never had like VCs or angels that funded me to specific things. I think you've had that experience.
Somewhat.
So yeah, so there is probably, I would imagine, already that external pressure to create something that is not that you want to create. And I know you, especially, you being an engineer and being like extremely stubborn at times, that might be like not a good like combination.
Good point. Yeah, I wonder how that is for you guys as Macros Pro, because I definitely felt that every time we were funded, I mean, Blockboard did an ICO, and I also before that joined a few startups that were VC funded, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong when you're funded. Also, really, just from a very like in a nutshell, the psychological principle of that, you're not risking your own cash. It's just, and it has a lot of consequences to the way that you show up to your business. And some people, I mean, ICO craze was actually a good example where when cash is given too easily, um, people, in my opinion, stupid people start doing really stupid and also illegal stuff. You know, they set up projects, do rug pools, all that stuff, and it's definitely just, it's a few steps further away from what VC funding also enables, which is a certain laziness and lack of morals. But I wonder then, as Microdose Pro and as you as well, you know, with the stance of wanting to do something that is fun, microdosing is becoming huge. It's super popular. Do you consider this, and I know that you guys want to grow and you are growing already, is this a consideration you're making to really go into VC funded hypergrowth? Are you busy with that? Is it already done?
Yeah, yeah. To just like what you said about stupid people and and growth. Like, I think that I'm reading this book by Charlie Munger, that was the business partner of Warren Buffett,
Cool.
and he has this quote. It's I have to quote it correctly, but uh, smart people and high amount of leverage almost always ends in disaster. And then he adds, I have to add to that, stupid people and high amount of leverage also ends in disaster. So it's basically high amounts of leverage always ends in disaster.
Yeah.
Um, I think I agree with that after some just some experience, but I'm not sure yet. I have to have some more direct feedback on that. But to answer your question about like us or me looking for VC angels, yes, it is something that I think is just inevitable. So you can only do so much with we're both young guys. You're not even 30 yet. I'm 31. We've had some years of experience. We had some successes, some failures. It's part of the game. But if you really want to do serious stuff at one point, then it's an inevitable step in our position. I would argue. So it's something I am not too eager about. It's something I am, like I said, for the reasons we discussed. It feels for me to giving up a sense of control. Um, that's probably also why I need to do it. It will be a good experience for me to have that. It's something I'm looking forward to in a way as well because of that. It's probably will be one of the most, let's say, periods in my life where I can learn the most, because this is something I think that is it's not very common. Like, unless you're, of course, you're a startup founder and you have a great idea, then you get funding. But this is already a very small amount of people in the world that have that experience in the first hand, right? That know what something like that means, and to go through that. And it's something I'm open to. Like, I think it's something I definitely want to experience. I want to learn from in this life.
Wow, cool, man. That's wise as well. You and you're right. I have the same experience. You definitely need at some point, if you have something that has some product market fit, then especially if it's a rising industry like microdosing is, then to make something happen, you will need more capital, and you'll probably also need more people that have a stake. And it's easier to get people in to have a stake if they invest. What I really like, might be a good way to end this episode on a really wise note, is something that you just mentioned, is the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. So the fact that you might struggle with the fact that you have to leave a lot of control to others because they have a big stake in your company, etc., is is something that maybe also specifically with your and also my personality type, I think, because there's something definitely related to wanting to do things yourself, being slightly introverted, maybe sometimes preferring isolation, having autonomy is very important. To give up control teaches you a lot about yourself, and also the things, the areas where you're right, where you should have autonomy and you should be stubborn, and also the areas where you shouldn't. So it's going to be yeah, it's going to be an interesting journey for both of us to have more failures and hopefully more successes too.
Hopefully more success, dude. That would be nice. But no, that was a very good closure, man. Like, chapeau. I think we should leave it at that. Like, I'm not gonna beat that stuff, so let's leave it at that. because I already feel that I want to talk for hours more, because also, of course, we didn't speak really for a year. Yeah, of course, we had some conversations on Boom and WhatsApp, but our WhatsApp conversations are basically two symbols and that's it. Um, and there's like always 5 weeks delay between it. But I sense like we touched on so many things, and AI, and and a lot of things already that I want to discuss, yeah, or debate about. But I think it's good to save that to for next episodes. This was a very good reboot, like you said. It's a great name for the episode as well. A good reboot. I feel alive again. I feel that this project is alive again as well.
Yeah,
And let's have some fun in the coming years. I would say.
absolutely. Yeah, I feel the same. It was a good reboot. I think also because the amount of topics we touched on is food for thought, food for new episodes. So looking forward to create those. Thanks, man.
Awesome, man.
All right,
See ya.
cheers. See you.